on today's webinar, we are going to be looking at the life cycle of companies and how you move from being an agile lean startup to becoming an agile scale up. My name's Neil Lewis. I've been a certified scaling up coach for probably around 12 years now, so a good amount of time. And I realize the challenge that many of you are going to go through as you look to go from the challenges of being that startup to becoming an agile scale up, and hopefully not too big where you ultimately screw up around that. But it's these scale ups where all value really comes from. They're the ones who are growing significantly, creating jobs in an economy in a local area. So that's why they're highly prized. But we know that it's really, really difficult in order to do that. So you're able then to just understand what is the gap, the chasm, as it were, from being that lean startup to becoming an agile scale up. So that's what we're going to focus on today's webinar. This how do you overcome this real challenging area? And we'll probably look at it from the perspective of strategy. We're going to look at terms of that having a way of having an agile workforce, and then how do you execute at pace as well, and then ensure that you don't run out of cash. So as I said, from our perspective in terms of helping companies scale up, we use these 4 decisions of getting the right people on the bus, having a great strategy, being able to execute flawlessly, and making sure that you understand that cash is the oxygen that runs your business. So classically, I guess the way that many people run a business is you write a business plan, you get all excited about what the next 4 to 5 years it looks like. You then start building a team, and then you kind of introduce a product into the marketplace, and then all of you, but definitely the founders and the sort of top team, are really then in the basis of sell. All your energy is selling the product that you hope will gain some traction in the marketplace. But unfortunately, and this is one of the reasons why I think we're so passionate about what we do, is 75% of all startups invariably fail for a number of reasons. They run out of cash, but more often than not, they fail because they haven't got a proven value proposition. They haven't tested the market to ensure that the product that they have invented or are introducing has got demand and pent-up demand around that. So, I guess everyone has got a plan until they're punched in the face. And when the first kind of challenges come along, or there's some headwinds and stuff like that, and then are you able to have that strong enough resolve and the thinking to be able to go through that? So the number of startups, so unfortunately, very few of them will ever make probably their 5th birthday. And there's a number of reasons why. There is not enough leadership. There is not a scalable infrastructure in place. There's not marketing effectiveness. And what we're going to look at today, that the model or the business plan and the proposition that you've come up with has not been proven around that. In Vern Harnish's book, Scaling Up, which has just been rewritten actually, 2.0, Vern looks at here what he calls the valleys of death, and these different chasms that you've got to manage to get a way across if you're going to successfully move from being that startup to becoming a scale up. So these different areas, it could be, again, about getting the right people on board. When you get above 1 million, starting to be able to put a culture in place, starting to put strategic thinking in place, as opposed to just tactical, really then starting to get to work on your business model and business model canvas. But we know it's really, really hard. It's really difficult to grow an organization. There's so many different headwinds, and it's just, and I guess in the last couple of years as well, with a pandemic, that's tested everyone's resolve and ability to keep on going. So rather than feeling like it's a real slog, what we want to make sure is that actually It feels like you've got a well-drilled team, you've got the wind in your back, you've got momentum, the business is moving forward, everything feels a lot easier. And that's the way it should be. If you've got a business that's working without dramas and everyone's pulling in the same direction, everyone's aligned, makes everything an awful lot easier. But of course, most of us, it's historically come, with a beautiful business plan, lots of spreadsheets. We go to the bank and we like to think this is what the business will look like in 5 years out. And we'd like to be this size, this number of people, and this number of factories or whatever it is. But in reality, it's very difficult to make any sort of predictions 5 years in advance. So what happens is most product developers, most companies really don't solicit and get that important customer feedback until it's too late. And all the plans, all your dreams are maybe for now, because actually you haven't been able to come up with a viable proposition that the market wants around that. So that's what we're going to dive into today, is rather than saying, well, I'm just going to go and execute a model from the get-go, is you've got to actually figure out and have a search for a model that has demand in the marketplace, seeks to solve a meaningful problem that's exists in the market, or exists with your customers, or exists in a potential market. And that's really, really important around that. So, again, I think also the models of old need to adapt. They need to change, because it's a very different mode that we operate in now. And the good news is, I think there's a real degree of excitement around opportunities. What could be in this brave new world. But I think what is one of the key learnings, the key takeouts from this session, is that invariably now, fast will beat big every single time. Being nimble, being agile, being able to move quickly, fast will beat big. And it's no surprise now that I guess in the stock market in the UK, in the US and stuff like that, most of the tech companies, most of the organizations that command all the wealth nowadays weren't even around 10 or 15 years ago. So, I think that trend is only here to stay, and probably will accelerate a bit more. What you have on one hand, those big organizations, they are blessed with sophisticated processes that are well built in. They probably have become efficient over time, and they're probably able to grow out on a reasonably predictable model. But like the super tanker, as markets change quickly, they'll find it very difficult, if you've got inbuilt processes and deep inset cultures, the way things are done, to be able to pivot and be able to move quickly. So we see now that organizations that have that agility, have that flexibility, may well prevail, may well win. So again, if you can build out ostensibly the muscle of a big company, but then also have the heart of a small company, that's something that is significantly beneficial around it. And one key takeaways that I want you to take from today's webinar is putting yourself into your customer's shoes and figuring out the challenges that they're going through right now, the hardships they've got. What are the things that that's making their lives difficult? And then just ask the question: how can we make this easy? How can we make this whole solution? How can we make this process easier for them? And it's no surprise now that some of the biggest companies in the world have literally obsessed on this and put the customers front and foremost of their thinking. And if you think about, if you're going to go and buy a book or anything nowadays, probably the easiest way of getting that is just clicking on to Amazon, finding out what we want to purchase, and then with one click, get our purchase, and it's sent to us maybe the next day, probably soon it'll be the same day. Probably won't be too long before it's in the same hour. I mean, so the whole notion now of making things easy, I think, is really, really important concept to take away. So what do we need to think? And I'm just going to take through today 3 or 4 different models from which you can practically put into your business almost straight away that will help you to move at pace, move at agile. Now, most founders that I work with, most entrepreneurs, and I'm sure this is around the world, start off with a big dream. And dream to create great business, I imagine, a dream to make an impact somewhere in the world, which is great. And we all need to have dreams and stuff like that. But it'd be a crying shame if most of the people, startup, well, I think the stat I gave a few minutes ago is 3/4 of people have this massive dream or have a dream, invariably won't be successful. So what can we do about this? So I think, again, creating something as a dream that at its heart is bold, is clear, it's simple, it's exciting, it's believable, that when you've got that, it gives you as a founder real energy, gives you a sense of purpose and the organization a sense of purpose, and more importantly, gives real clarity on the direction that we're heading. So the first tool that I really want to get to and talk about this morning, as you look to summit to an Everest or look to achieve your dreams, is called the Vivid Vision book. And it's by a guy called Cameron Herold. And this is a great way when you're kind of starting to think about what your business will be like in 3 years' time. And the book, by the way, gives you a really good playbook on how to go about creating a powerful 5 to 6 page document that paints that vivid description of what the business will look like, what it'll feel like, what it's going to be, the way that it's almost sort of the action you're doing in around that. And when you get to work on it, you are able to put yourself into the basis where, let's say it's March 2026, and this is the way that business is going to look. Now, obviously, it's not going to look exactly like that, but I find that the clearer you are on your thinking around that, then it gives you energy, it gives you purpose, it gives you direction, but also it aligns your team, it keeps you focused, it keeps, more importantly, you motivated, and over time, I suppose it can attract investors, it can attract talent, great new customers as well. So the way we typically get to work on this, I'll sit down with a founder, a CEO. This is a gentleman by the name of Mark Gannon. He runs a company in Ireland. I've been with him for the last couple of days. And we just get to work on brainstorming, getting post-its down in a number of different areas. What's the size of the company going to look like? What is the culture going to feel like? What are the people going to look like? What sort of customers are we going to have in the future? What sort of experience would a customer have? What's the manufacturing going to look like? How do we make sure that's lean and agile? What awards are we winning? So we got to the work on this back in November of last year when we first started doing it. And I've just come back from Dublin where we presented to the whole of the team. And it was great, the excitement it brought about. So that's the first hack, just in terms of having a vivid vision that you can set down. And you can do that with the team. You can do it with someone like myself as a coach, but you could do it on your own as well around that. But that's something to think about around that. The next thing is going through that is, how do we go about pivoting the business? How do we go about making sure that we stay agile on our growth journey? So one of the next resource, by the way, I've just seen sort of a quick question on chat, is the Vivid Vision on Amazon? Yes, it is on Amazon, and so is this next book, The Lean Startup by Eric Rice, or Reese, I think it's Eric Rice, which again is a really, really good resource for anyone who is in the business of creating that lean startup right now. And one of the things that Eric talks about in the lean startup is the importance of the fact that, just going back to that vivid vision I spoke about a few minutes ago, is the notion of having a strategy that can adapt and move quickly, a bit like that sailing boat. that we saw at the big, top of the show is something that can pivot quickly, quickly move direction to see an opportunity or take advantage of a trend that's in the market that you may have spotted. And great quote here by Wayne Gretzky, the famous Wayne Gretzky. Probably, I'm not a great ice hockey fan, but if I were, I'd imagine he is probably the greatest of all time. And one of the famous quotes that's attributable to Wayne is, "You need to skate to where the puck is going, not where it has been. You need to skate to where the puck is going." By that, he means you need to anticipate what the next play is going to be, where you think the puck is heading, and you can be there at the right place at the right time. So we've got a tool here we use with our clients, which we call the SWOT tool. You may have heard of the SWOT tool: SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The SWOT tool, on the other hand, allows us to take time out to not only look at our strengths, look at our weaknesses, but also critically to take time to look at trends that are taking place in the market. And you ask yourself this question: what are the significant trends right now in my market that could be changed around technology? It could be around changes in distribution, product innovation. What's the market done to change? What consumer dynamics have changed over the last few years? What social trends have changed? What's been the impact of the pandemic around the way that we may have changed our work practices now? All these things are happening the whole time. So if you're able to, every 90 days, as part of your quarterly planning session, and definitely when you go into your annual planning meet, take some time out to use this document. We'll put it into the file notes at the end, just to have thinking time about what are those trends that are taking place in your market, and then what are those trends? What can you take advantage of? What maybe you will move away from, so you can make those little pivots in your business at the same time. And then what you want to be able to do is have a clarity around where your strengths are, where your blind spots are as well, those inherent weaknesses that aren't likely to change, just to make sure that you're able to utilize what your core strengths or your core competencies to apply to whatever trends you're seeing, so you can capitalize around that. So that's what we call the SWOT tool. Very useful to be able to make sure you make those little iterations around growth. So those are some of the fundamentals. Let's just now revisit some of the principles of the lean startups. And just to reiterate again, one of the resources that we recommend is the Lean Startup by Eric Rice around that. And one of the things that talk about here as a lean startup is how you're going to go about proving that you've got a viable business model, that you can then sketch out your hypotheses that I think I've got here a solution that might benefit, but I don't know right now. So we need to have some sort of a way of doing that. Two great resources that's going to recommend now. Number one, the business model canvas, and then number two, the value proposition design framework. Both by a gentleman, written by a gentleman by the name of Alex Osterwalder. They are great resources to have, almost as a playbook that you can go about revisiting where your model is at the moment, and then use it as a way of sensing whether your hypothesis is on track. So the business model canvas, as at its heart, a way that you can look at and understand who are your key partners, what are the key activities that your business currently does, what are the key resources you may have in terms of maybe have a factory around that, does revenue come into your business, what's the cost structure look like, what customer segments do you currently have, what are the channels, routes to market, what sort of customer relationship do you have, and then looking at the value proposition that you currently deliver around that, and what assumptions are you going to test when it comes to your model. So when it looks at your value proposition, What key activities do our value propositions require? What are going to be our distribution channels? What sort of customer relationships are going to set us apart from our competitors? Where do we anticipate revenue streams coming from? We referenced this at a coaching session yesterday. Mentioned that I'm working with a business that imports sofas from China, and their key activity, a bit like Zara, they don't make clothes, they make sofas, but their key activities are product design, and then they develop those, and then they manufacture those sofas in China, and then they're all about shipping of those sofas over through containers and then successfully selling them into the UK markets of businesses like CSS, Dunelm, etc., etc. But they know one of the areas that they're going to challenge in their business model is that to be competitive, they need to be very quick at spotting trends in the market, maybe a fabric color, maybe a design or a certain sofa, and then quickly get the latest trend, copy that, get it manufactured, get it into the marketplace. So we use this business model canvas as Zara yesterday just to help inspire and change and make some iterations to their model as well. So that's a business model canvas. And the key point here, as you iterate and grow, is making sure that you've got quick customer development. And this is all around listening and learning, putting a proposition out to a potential customer niche or a segment and finding out whether or not there is a demand for that product. Or if not, what are the key things that you could change to make sure that your product is something that is meaningful. So here, I want you to put yourselves firmly into the customer's shoes whenever you're asking it and see it through their perspective and ask yourself this question: what are the jobs that need to be done? What are the jobs that need to get done? Ultimately came from a guy called Clayton Christensen, who is a professor at Harvard Business School. But when you are iterating and you're thinking about what are the jobs that need to be done, that allows you then to use the second tool that I mentioned from Alex Osterwalder. And then this is the value proposition design tool. And we tend to use this to just ask ourselves, what is the customer job that needs to get done? Currently, what frustrations do they have in the category or with a particular product? And what if we were to be able to introduce a product or a market or a service would be a benefit to them, would make their lives easier, would be game creators around that. And then you get to work on creating some sort of value proposition, something that, again, that puts yourself firmly in the customer's shoes and ask yourself, what are the jobs that need to be done? And this is a task that you can't do sitting at your desk. You need to be in the market. You need to be listening to what's important around that. And then bring those insights back to the team as fast as you can do, and making those iterations to make sure that to start with, you've got a minimum viable product that goes out. So again, it could be around about customer discovery, customer validation. Is it something that's of benefit, making little iterations or pivots, then going through the customer discovery route again until you find and iterate on something that has got real value to the marketplace, that someone is prepared to pay good money for in order to move that particular product proposition through around that. So again, the importance of having an agile product development where you're iterating quickly against what tends to be the traditional model of product development, which is much longer, it's much linear in around that. And particularly the normal timeline is around 12 months when you've gone from your planning phase as a business, you've gone through some analysis and design, you've then gone about implementing it, you finally started testing it, and then your evaluation could be 12 months down the road. That takes a lot of time before you even got a feel as to whether or not you've got something that has got that minimum viable proposition. So if you now think about the way that lean thinking comes across, agile frameworks come across, they're all about short, quick cycles. Short, quick cycles where you are putting a proposition from initial planning and brainstorming into the market, getting customer feedback, making those little iterations around that, deploying it again, seeing what's what, seeing what other frustrations or pain relievers might be required, then putting it back in, getting that customer feedback, putting it back into the market again. So those quick, short cycles, and using, and I'll talk about this in a second, Scrum methodology to again move at pace. So that ultimately, not after 12 months, you're seeing something that may or may not have traction, you're seeing it much more quickly and then being able to make those iterations. And the good news is in the value proposition design playbook, you've got the framework in which to go about making these short, quick cycles, how to go about asking the right questions and iterate quickly. So two really powerful playbooks that you need to do. I'll keep referencing this. And one case study that the Harvard Business Review looked at was a company called Blue River Technology. They spent a lot of time up front creating an automated lawnmower. They thought that this was going to have a huge amount of traction input for golf clubs. And then they went out to golf clubs and said, here's a benefit in terms of automation and stuff like that. But they probably got feedback that the quality of mow that you needed on a green was much better, that needed much better quality than they were able to do just by the automated. So that feedback came back. They said, okay, our solution might not necessarily be for people who are in golf courses and greenkeepers. Let's see now if we can go to farmers as another market segment and see whether or not automatically they could have some automated lawnmower that would just basically cut the weeds down. That got a bit more interest, but fundamentally it wasn't good enough. But when they were talking and listening, a number of the farmers who are actually in the vegetable and the salad growing said, one of the challenges we really have is getting something that's intricate in between lettuces and stuff like that. If you could create something that would be able to go up through a lettuce row, that's just takes us a lot of manual work to do that. That's something that might be really interesting to us. So they went back, made some iterations, and ultimately fell on a product that became the market leader across the US and I would imagine around the world now in thinning lettuces. So made the little iterations until they came onto a product proposition that was right for their market, that played to the technology breakthrough that they had, and they were able to move at pace. And once you've tested the marketplace, then you're in a position to move from being that lean startup to an agile scale up. And that's where we move from the testing phase to once we've got something that's proven in the market, we then need to ramp up our operations quickly. This is where we get into lean execution, where we're now getting clear about what we've got a market segment. Let's say, for example, it's all the lettuce growers across the US or across Holland or wherever the lettuce growers are. How do we go about getting that marketplace understood, getting a marketing communication and everything else to create demand in that particular marketplace, and then go about building a company, which, by the way, is what we help as scale-up coaches doing that. So organizationally, you've got the traditional ventures that have got functional departments. You tend to hire for experience, people who've already got proven track record around execution. They've got CVs that are proven in this area, and you tend to have traditional methods of measuring success in terms of, we'll measure income, sales, our assets, our balance sheet, cash flows. On the other hand, lean startups do not have functional departments. They have agile teams that are broken up into smaller elite groups around that. They hire for people who've got the ability to learn quickly. They've got a growth mindset. People who can make decisions, can go at pace, are comfortable about uncertainty, comfortable about change that was taking place. That's probably where the scorecard for that role will come about, and they'll have KPIs and OKRs that are around customer acquisition. What's the cost of acquiring customers? What's the value of a lifetime customer? What churn have we got? How viral can we go around it? Totally different metrics and OKRs around that. So just in terms of just bringing that alive, sitting around people, we need to now have in place, those ability to create agile teams, and knowing that to remove drama, we take out bureaucracy, we make things as easy as possible, as frictionless as possible. And a lot of research now is coming back to the team of teams, the optimal team size to be agile, to move at pace, is around about 4.6. Now, I'm not exactly sure how you can carve someone up into a 0.6 of a person, but the notion here is that around the sort of 5 mark, you've got a team that can go at pace. More often than not, if you're in the Marines now, you're in the SAS, their teams are of 4 people. Very, very, they're all able to make quick decisions, make rapid decisions in maybe sometimes real challenging circumstances, and they're able to trust one another. They're highly skilled, highly trained around that, and we're starting to see either the same in nature, be it ant colonies who offer agile teams, and traditionally now moving away from the traditional organizational chart, which might look something like this, to the real organizational chart, which actually doesn't look like this, but just it's always a good sort of punctuation mark. No, the agile scale up now is going to be teams that kind of get out. You start off, and then you're creating maybe small product groups of teams that go into that. A bit like an amoeba, as you grow out, you're breaking into more smaller teams that can move at pace, can do product development. So, yeah, the agile scale up we see in the future is going to be very different to that traditional hierarchy that you'd have seen in the past. So that's kind of the notion now, that as you scale up, you've got to have these, not necessarily elite teams, but fast moving teams that are comfortable about scrums, comfortable about innovation, comfortable about making iterations, and also comfortable about being comfortable with change, I guess. And then we also need to make sure that we've got efficiency. We're able to scale at speed, and take away drama, making sure that we can go at pace. So this is where we advocate what we call the process accountability chart. And again, we'll make sure that in the follow-up notes for today's webinar, there's a link to this particular tool that you can use around that. But it's recognizing that what are the 4 or 5 processes that we need to put in place that reduces all the drama, that might go across different functions in the organization, that if they're all working seamlessly and they've all got some sort of person accountable for making sure that they're operating seamlessly, the business can just grow and scale in a much easier way. So what we advocate here is to brainstorm a raft of really, really important processes. So one of them might be from today's conversation is, what is our innovation process? What's our go-to-market process around that? What is our meeting process to make sure that we can have agile meetings? What are the ways that we are getting money in and collecting money around that? And then having some sort of OKR or KPI or key performance indicator around that as well. So yeah, different processes that you could just set down. And the benefit then of just having one person accountable for each process means that rather than they kind of, well, it goes across sales and it might go across marketing and it goes across operations and no one really owns it, you've got one person who's really taking good care of it and making sure that the process improvements are going to make sure that things can go faster or go more efficiently or improved around that. So that's the process accountability chart. One of the guys that I really love when it comes to just moving at lean and moving at pace is a guy called Paul Akers. Another great resource here. You can get it on Amazon, but actually better still, you can listen to his YouTube videos where he captures a lot of the key processes on 2-second lean. And it's just great when you're having stand-ups in a meeting. Paul is always challenging his team, doesn't matter who they are in the team, to come up with some sort of process improvement. So it takes away, reduces waste, and makes things move faster through the organization. And he talks about things like overproduction, over processing, having too much stock or inventory, making mistakes, having defects around that, just unused, motion up and down, the factory and stuff like that. So really, really good thing. Interestingly, what he calls that is the number one deadly sin of waste is unused employee genius, i.e. tapping into your team's minds, getting their ideas down, because they're the ones that are closest to the coalface who've often got the best ideas around that. And then what we want to make sure is that we are able to iterate quickly. So again, having some sort of Scrum framework where yesterday I was with a team in Ireland, we were getting clear about what it is that we need to improve the whole way of the product cycle. How do we manufacture quickly? How do we improve product designs that can get into the market more swiftly? And then we just get into mini teams who are going to work on that sprint planning meeting, then figure out what are the key tasks that need to be done, and then literally solving a problem in a 1 to 4 week sprint that really iterates with daily Scrum meetings. That what do we need to focus on today to move this project forward? What's the stuck that we need to overcome around that? And then having some sort of process to review it, what the log of lessons learned, and then what's the finished work look like, and how do we embrace that back in and update our processes or update the way the business works. So yeah, it's a really neat way of moving at pace, having some sort of Scrum framework around that. So that's the Scrum framework. And one of the areas that I again advocate around that is the benefit of having a daily huddle. And daily huddle for me, probably no more than 15 minutes, standing up, do it at an odd time, not 8 o'clock, maybe 2 minutes past 8. And you're answering 3 questions. Part of it, good news and check-in on what you achieved yesterday. Number 2, what's my number 1 focus today? What's my number 1 priority? What's the thing? And be very specific around this. And then thirdly, where is my stuck? What am I stuck on at the moment? And if every person has got probably 60 seconds just to go through this, everybody knows where their focus is for today. And more importantly, what's the stuck or the constraint that's holding them back from moving forward. So we've gone through at pace the benefits of having a lean mindset, benefits of having clarity and a vision about where you're taking your organization, being able to pivot more quickly, being able to think about in terms of that swift way of getting the right product into the market, and also making sure that you're not taking what you think is going to be your absolute brilliant solution, but then find that there's no real demand or traction for it in the marketplace. So the great news is, by doing this, is that we have a higher startup success rate. That those failures that we talked about right at the top of the show, around about 75%. More we can do to help those people successfully get going and then move from that lean startup phase to the agile scale up means that after benefits, we've got more job growth, more job creation, new products that can create value in the marketplace, more customer satisfaction, a whole raft of economic benefits. And as I spoke about earlier on, those barriers of startup foundation of getting the first customer wrong, getting our product wrong, that long technology development cycle of over a year. Well, if we can mitigate all of those, then that just encourages more of us to be able to test a hypothesis, hopefully follow a dream, solve a problem in the world, put ourselves into the customer's shoes and the job that needs to be done around that. And good news is that some of the macro trends now are encouraging more startups. So we are seeing a decentralization of capital. It means it's probably easier to get angel money, PE money, crowdfunding now. So if you've got an idea that you can think you've got, that has got some sort of traction, you can get money from the crowd, so that there's so many resources now that you can now just get ideas from the cloud. You can get resources from the cloud that makes this so much easier than years ago to do that. And there's a lot of talk at the moment around Chat GPT and how that's going to revolutionize a lot of the meaning, sort of mundane tasks or marketing tasks. And then make sure that you're alive to opportunities to benefit from maybe manufacturing offshore or outsource your manufacturing so that you don't have the cost of expensive manufacturing in those startups. And I think is the other thing, I haven't got it on here, but right now, over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be huge opportunities to acquire other companies as well. So it's a great way of creating value by acquiring some other organization that might have what you need in their business. So just to sum up, traditional ventures have elaborate planning, 5-year plans. A lot of things are upfront design. The lean startup is all around experimentation, quick movement, customer feedback, iteration again, many design iterations until you have a value proposition that can be valued by the market. Fail fast, keep learning, meet that change head on, have that resilience to keep go. All these things will stand you very well indeed.